Well, today's a real treat because we have with us a friend of mine and someone who's been a frequent guest on our show. And I thought it would be great to have him on in light of this big sweeping mandate that we see with the election for the concept of making America healthy again. We have with us Joel Salatin. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, David. It's a real privilege to be with you.
Yeah, and it's great to have you on. And a lot of folks are revisiting and looking into your work. And I thought for folks who are longtime listeners of my show, they may be familiar because we've done many interviews on radio and podcast together. But there's a lot of folks who may be learning about you for the first time. And I've seen your name being mentioned to me on Twitter a lot more and all this stuff. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to just kind of bring you on and ask you kind of your background. You're a farmer, and that's what you've done your whole life.
Yeah, that's right. We farm in Virginia, Shenandoah Valley. We've not used. My mom and dad bought this property in 1961. We've added to it now twice, but we have been here this whole time since 1961 without using any chemical fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides. We're a non-chemical, and we're not. We're not huge, but we're not backyard either. We employ 22 people. I saw David where McDonald's just had that recall that outbreak in their onions, of I think it was E. coli, and
Mm.
I checked the company that they bought the onions from, and out in Colorado, and that company employs 20,000 people. So we employ 22. So we're at a different scale and perhaps a different vulnerability as well.
Yeah, it reminds me of kind of I remember it clearly. I'm sure it was a similar dynamic today based on the difference in funding. But I remember the 2016 election, Trump had a very tiny little team and he had a lot less money than Hillary. Hillary had a big, machine. She had so many staffers and yet she had all the media on her side. She had everything. And Trump was very nimble and able to, just with a tiny team and a great kind of zest for using media, earned media, and so forth, they were able to win that victory. And now it's probably in a similar sense. I know that his opponent raised like what, two or three times more than he did, and still there was a huge decisive win with the popular vote. So just kind of a parallel there between what you can do with efficiency and innovative farming techniques like what you do when you practice and versus also how it can be done in a political sense. So, having said that, you're known for what is called regenerative agriculture. What is regenerative agriculture?
Well, in general, it's leaving the land better than you found it. I think that's is probably as good as anything. I mean, we farmers, I like to call us the our nation's resource first responders. We have a lot of love today, and deservedly so, for our first responders. And I suggest that our air, soil, and water are pollinators and basic natural resource base is for that. Our farmers are the first responders. We're the ones that control most of that, and so we can either exploit it and rape it and monetize it into cash today and deplete it, or we can actually upgrade it and leave it more productive, prosperous, and sufficient than it was when we came. Yes, farmers can actually grow soil. We can actually grow, hydrate the landscape, grow water. We can do all these things, but it won't be done with chemical fertilizers and Monsanto.
Yeah, and now a lot of people might say, "Well, that sounds great, but could that actually be scaled?" I mean, Joel, I've met you, and I've said this on a recent podcast. I've seen you in the field. I've seen you at farms that are more conventionally designed, from the World War II era model, right? And I've seen you looking around and kind of like it reminds me of that movie A Beautiful Mind about that guy. What was his name? Nash, Professor Nash, who could see
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And I see you out there, and I and I watch you, and you'll just be looking around at turkeys and chickens and hawks and fowls and everything. You can see you looking at fences and realigning things like it's a like Minecraft or those video games,
Yeah, yeah.
and I thought, you know, that's a great mind. Could we actually, a lot of folks may not have that penchant for kind of doing what you do, which I know I'm kind of getting into the weeds of it, but rotational grazing and integrating chickens and cows and turkeys and all these different things to maximize uh, care of the land and quality foods and kind of using a natural principle of the Serengeti grazing model of, that kind of model where there's the wildebeest and then there's the chickens, the birds. That's kind of where you're pulling from. But can this actually be scaled in something that could actually sweep the nation and everybody could feed off of this
Oh,
type?
no question. In fact, I think it's important to realize that 500 years ago, North America produced more food than it does today. Now, it wasn't all eaten by people. We had 200 million beavers that ate more vegetables than the entire human population in North America today. We had 2 million wolves that needed 20 pounds of meat a day. So they ate a lot of bison. The bison, there were whatever 1, 2 million bison across the. I'm sorry, not one or two. I mean, 100 to 200 million bison across the fields. There were passenger pigeons that were so huge that they blocked out the sun, for a couple of days as they flew over. So North America actually produced more food 500 years ago than it does today. And so, can this be scaled? Absolutely. And so, at our farm, what we've tried to do is look at these ancient patterns, if you will, the platforms that launch that kind of productivity, and say, well, how do we duplicate that with modern technology, with whatever property ownership? The neighbor doesn't want our migrating cows on his place, right? And so how do we make that fit together? And that's exactly what we've done. And so fundamentally, it's a change. It's a change of pattern, and it's also a change of symbiosis rather than monospecies. Most farms they just produce one thing. So what we want to do is produce a bunch of things that act symbiotically, so that 1 plus 1 equals 3. And the other just element is that we want integration, not segregation. Our food system right now is fundamentally segregated. We get the fertilizer over here, we grow the chickens over here, we butcher them over here, we sell them over here, we eat them over there. Everything is segregated, and what we're trying to do is you get tremendous efficiencies when you integrate. And probably the final little point here on this is that we run a carbon farming economy. Well, what is that? Well, the way you build soil is with carbon, compost, decomposing things.
Yeah,
And so when Putin invaded Ukraine and fertilizer jumped 400%, we just laughed because we don't buy any of it.
yeah,
That's the kind of resilience that we're talking about. And so
yeah,
right now, our country spends $5 billion a year fighting forest fires out west, in dead trees and overbuilt, dead fuel loads. If we actually took that and composted it, we would eliminate the chemical fertilizer bill. We would actually grow earthworms, build more soil, and grow more food than we do being dependent on Putin and Morocco for rock phosphate.
yeah, for sure. And I remember I was in a little car ride with you, and I was like, "What do you think about this Ukraine thing? Is that what's going to do to the food system?" You said it has nothing to do with my operation. It's not affecting me one bit. And I thought
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
also another thing, I remember something that people may have forgot in the memory hole of 24/7 news cycles or whatever is this that remember the whole thing where they were targeting. There was some kind of alleged foreign hackers messing with the beef producers. Remember, there's like how many? Five or something? And you were saying
yeah,
this is a top heavy system that is vulnerable for foreign
yeah.
influence or something that could be destructive even internally.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, four companies right now control 85% of America's beef and pork supply. that is highly vulnerable and actually not very competitive. To have four centralized players, and that's why in the spring of 2020 with COVID, that's why one of the reasons why store shelves went empty and all that, because these aircraft carriers are not very nimble. And if you've got rocky shoals and you're in disturbing waters, you want a speedboat. You don't want an aircraft carrier. So our farm is a speedboat, and
Yeah.
so it's not the big that eat the small; it's the fast that eat the slow.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so nimbleness is really important when it comes to being resilient.
So that goes to kind of another question I had. You mentioned beef, and my show, I was the only guy in news radio nightly, FM, AM, hitting on mainstream radio this idea that we've got to address the vegetable oils. I was doing this on broadcast nightly news radio, hitting it in articles, pushing it, having the top scientists and doctors. There was conversations happening in the podcast world, but in terms of mainstream news media radio, I was the guy hitting that thing as early as 2017, 2018 about the vegetable oils. But a lot of people wonder, I think, and here's my point. This has been a big pet crusade of mine to challenge these toxic vegetable oils. You mentioned beef. Is it possible, even? Do we have enough land? Do we have enough resources and manpower to do a Manhattan Project level thinking of our food system such that we could feed our appetite for cooking oil with what we used to use, which was beef fat, which is this beef tallow. So much of it I know gets thrown away by the butcher or thrown away by the processor because there's not enough demand for beef tallow yet. But the public is quickly learning, thanks to folks like Bobby Kennedy and others who have sounded the alarm about seed oils, that we got to really make beef tallow great again. But is it even possible to do it? Can we actually feed the country and change those frying oils so that people can go through a drive-through one day and not have to worry about their child getting diabetes or obesity or heart disease at a young age because of the kind of cooking oil that they're eating?
Well, first of all, I'll say I don't have a definitive answer on it, but what I will say is that add to the beef tallow, add to that uh, lard from pork, as well as butter from dairy. I know they all have different properties, so I don't want to, I don't, heat and temperature and all those things. I get all that, but the point is there are a lot of alternative, alternative fats that are much safer than you know people don't realize that canola oil, for example, was developed in Germany as a diesel fuel and lubricant,
Mhm.
as an artificial grease, if you
Yeah.
will, to
Yeah.
to to petroleum. And here we started using it as a as a food item. And so hydrogenated vegetable oils, our country, this gets into another little angle here, but our country encouraged everybody to use this stuff, Crisco and hydrogenated vegetable oil, and encouraged everybody to use this for decades. And now it's interesting that the recommendation is not, well, just, diminish your use. It is, don't use it at all.
Yeah.
So America actually right now would be much healthier if the government had never told us what to eat.
Yeah.
As soon as the government got in the food business, they colluded with the industrial, sector, and started telling us what to eat, and it was all wrong. And so,
Mhm.
and so, is there enough? Yeah, the fact is that there generally there is enough of everything. We just have to, allocate it differently, and use it with more care. But as far as, like, people say, oh, we got to reduce our beef production. No, my goodness me, we our farm produces about three times as much beef per acre as the other farms, the average farm in our county, and we've never planted a seed or bought a bag of
Wow.
chemical fertilizer. It's just
Yeah.
management because we look at the wildebeest, we look at the bison, and we move them every day to another spot. So you know you're doing this very intensive controlled grazing, and that allows the grass to grow more, and then you can grow more. So we haven't even scratched the surface on what's possible in actual, ruminant production.
And we can make, if we kind of adapt to these principles and really kind of, it's going to take a cultural conversation. It's going to take a media conversation like you've been doing. I know you've been on, programs like myself. You've been on the big dog, Joe Rogan himself, and he's, seems to be having a lot of momentum in recent times here. That, this needs to be a cultural conversation. Like you said, it's got to happen not outside the government. It's got to happen primarily from the people. The people have to want to make the right choices, but they don't know. And they're so inundated with special interest funded uh, papers that tell them meat's bad, that's bad, this bad, that bad. It is so confusing that it's no wonder that the average person just kind of throws up their hand and says, well, they're going to get me from something. I'm going to die from something. I just eat what I got to eat. And then they suffer for no reason
Yeah.
because the method is to create madness. And so whenever I hear a person, because I've heard that over the time when I've said, well, look at what vegetable oils do here, here, and here, they'll say, yeah, but they say the opposite about here, here, here. And Harvard and American Heart Association and so many big icons and institutions keep creating just so much noise and confusion. The New York Times just did a story yesterday. Oh, you know, Kennedy says the seed oils are bad for you, but don't worry, the evidence suggests otherwise. Just like 6 feet to slow the spread, right? That evidence was always
Yeah.
so rock solid from the New York Times. Total BS. But, that's the
Yeah.
situation we're in. So, how do you navigate that?
Yeah. Well, how you navigate that is that you find people that you can trust. I mean, this it generally, David, it all comes down to trust. Who am I going to trust? And let me tell you, the beautiful fallout of COVID was that it shot a huge trust dart right through the heart of the CDC, Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, and a whole bunch of them, to where suddenly people realized that the orthodox narrative, just because it's spouted by credentialed people with alphabet soup behind their names, is as often as not some agenda-driven thing, and so people woke up, and what we're seeing now is, keto, carnivore, paleo. I mean, there's all these new understandings of what a more historically accurate diet is. It's not potato chips and Fritos. It's, a ribeye steak is actually much more ancestrally sound
Yeah.
than than a bag of corn chips.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so more and more people are realizing that, and I think too that there is a kind of a renewed, partly post COVID, but a renewed wellness interest, also being fueled by dysfunction within the culture.
Yeah.
You have snatch and grab in the cities. People get mugged. I mean, you've got just social
Yeah.
dysfunction in the cities, and there's this growing sense that, wow, the wheels are starting to fall off, and that's why Trump got elected, because we've watched 4 years of devolution in societal functionality, and when that happens, people get concerned about the wheels falling off. And what's the one thing you don't want to be when the wheels fall off? The one thing you don't want to be when the wheels fall off is sick. You don't want to be the one in the back bedroom saying, hey, hey, as y'all run out the front door, can you carry me with you? You want to be well. And so this whole dysfunctionality and everything has, I think, germinated a renewed desire and interest in wellness, including non-traditional, functional medicine, naturopathy, homeopathy, just like homeschooling did when schools started becoming more and more non-functional. They took the Ten Commandments out, changed the schools completely. Well, then that spawned the homeschool movement. Well, just like this now, the dysfunction is spawning the homestead movement, and the dysfunction medically, and the pharmaceutical whatever conspiracy, if you will, is funneling a new alternative wellness community. So these, the pendulum, unfortunately, the pendulum always has to swing way out of balance before, before before there's a movement that starts to counteract it. And I think that's where we are. And I couldn't be more excited about Trump's election. I mean, I don't think he's a savior. He's not Jesus. He's not gonna that. It it gave me an incredibly renewed faith in our country. Oh, other people are seeing this too. I'm so glad and so grateful that other people are seeing this too.
Yeah, well, a big part of that election that he got was from independents and people who are not traditional voters for a Republican candidate. He had Bobby Kennedy Jr. prominently featured, Nicole Shanahan, who was Kennedy's VP, who has been
Hmm.
a big advocate of regenerative agriculture, and she was prominently featured in one of the biggest ads they pushed kind of looked like
Right.
an assemblage of superheroes, and they
Yeah,
had
yeah,
Tulsi, who I know Tulsi's been big on this stuff. So many big prominent faces. So you really have to, I mean, look, we have a right to redress and address our government, but they really have to deliver on the Make
yeah, yeah,
America Healthy Again thing, because that was front and center of the public giving such a historic win. The first popular vote win of a Republican since what
yeah,
decades, many decades. So
yeah.
this
Hmm.
is not something you can tread lightly and just go along with business as usual and send out a couple tweets about how cute it is that Joe Salatin's farm is nice. I mean, there really needs to be some
Yeah,
serious reflection at the halls of power about listening to the people and
yeah,
addressing, because this is really fundamentally the first priority that I think has to be addressed, is something that RFK Jr. said very clearly. He said, my dream and what the Lord has given me is a desire to fix and stop childhood obesity, childhood metabolic dysfunction. In other words, he wants to stop dead in its tracks the chronic disease epidemic for children.
yeah.
And you want to talk about faith for a second. We know what Jesus says about those who stumble children.
Yes.
And when we have a system, I don't care what church you go to or don't go to or whatever, if you have an opportunity to know the truth and to tell the truth, and to tell the truth about what food guidelines should be or whether they should have them at all, or to talk about what's possible for farming and what's healthy, and you don't do what's good and you don't do what's right, that's wrong. That's a grievous
Yeah.
error of historic proportion. So we can't go that route.
It is. And then when you realize that the USDA has now come out and officially in writing said that that Fruit Loops and Cheerios are more nutritious than beef, you start realizing, man, the inmates are running the insane asylum. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and goodness, I mean, another initiative I know RFK Jr. wants to put forward is when you realize, I mean, this is the one that I can't get my head around this one, that $9 billion, 10% of the SNAP program, that's the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, used to be food stamps. But think about this: Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. Nutrition is in the, it's in the title, SNAP, okay? That 10% of it, $9 billion, goes to Coca Cola, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, sugary, high fructose corn syrup carbonated drinks.
Mhm.
Not only is there no nutrition in that, but it does all sorts of harmful things to people who drink it, and yet it's a direct subsidy. But David, I mean, if RFK Jr. goes in there and immediately and says, I mean, let's just take that one item. You know what? That's off. There's no high fructose corn syrup sugary drinks are going to be spent, with SNAP money. I mean, I don't know how you actually, implement that. Where the Coke police, I don't know where they are. But anyway, imagine the uproar within those big beverage companies. They're going to be amassing at K Street to do whatever. I mean, it's going to be unbelievable. I mean, and that's just one tiny, tiny little incremental thing that all of us on my side see as that's a no-brainer. I mean, if you can't get that done, you can't get anything done. That's just such a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not about, there's a place for healthy sugars. I mean, I think the public should demand to make Coca Cola great again by putting cane sugar back into their formula instead of high fructose corn syrup. It's certainly much more ancestrally healthy. And,
Yes.
they still have glass Coca Cola that they make with as a niche item, but I think there needs to be a real conversation from the public to say, there's a place for healthy sugars. And when people were drinking Coca Colas with cane sugar, they didn't have the diseases they have now. So there's something about the way in which some of these more modern additives that are, of course, crony subsidized. We know why. It's crony, it's corporate capture, and the public is just sitting there being fleeced and abused. And we need to have vigilant folks who can really make a difference and get real effective change done. If you had a magic wand, what would you want to do if you could help push positive change to really help folks?
Yeah, so my magic wand has nothing to do with asking for more government regulatory oversight. My magic wand is what I call a food emancipation proclamation. And I know that's a powerful nuance, from back in slavery, but what we've got right now is a situation where our entrepreneurial, small scale neighborhood food industry, farmers to food processors to people that would make chicken stock or charcuterie or uh, you know uh, butcher and make lard. What we've got is the small players are being summarily eliminated from the marketplace due to prejudicial, scale discriminatory food regulations. And so what we need is a way for neighborhood food transactions to occur without a license from the government. In other words, if I want to come to your farm, ask around, smell around, look around, and and as a consenting adult making a voluntary choice, and again, I'm using powerful language, we should be able to engage. I should be able to get a glass of raw milk from you. I should be able to get a chicken pot pie from you without a bureaucrat involved. I'm not suggesting that we take off all the regulations and you can, and Tyson can put hot pockets in Kroger's and Walmart, without regulations. I don't even want to. I'm just saying, let's let's free up the direct market sector, the direct producer consumer transaction. Let's free that up so that people can engage in food commerce at that level of transparency and relationality. Let's free that up to happen. And if we did that, there would be an explosion. I know because I talk to farmers all over the country. There are things that we would do here on our farm that we can't because the infrastructure, the licensing, the compliance costs are way too high. And and but there are thousands and thousands of entrepreneurial farmers and small scale cottage food processors who would jump on this, and that is the antidote to the stranglehold that the four big packers have on the system. We don't need to unleash the Federal Trade Commission on them for monopolistic practices. What we need to do is unleash the entrepreneurial spirit in the backyards and the hinterlands of America to access our communities with a safer, secure food alternative, and that competition in the marketplace would turn into a cascade of opportunity both to buy and to sell, and would actually create control and balance within the large agribusiness sector. I can't tell you how many people would start buying alternatively. I can tell you that a lot of the current small scale price problem is not because small scale operations are inefficient. It's because the regulations to
Yeah.
push a small scale outfit through an industrial scale license makes the overhead unnecessarily expensive, and so that's a lot of the price of local food is prejudicial food regulations, not the others. So we need to take the shackles off of the enslaved food system so that farmers can access their neighbors and neighbors can access their farmers without a bureaucrat being involved. And if we look, we've got choice in the bathroom, choice in the bedroom, choice in the womb. It's time to put choice in our mouths, in our stomachs.
I totally agree. You mentioned bullying small farmers, and that reminds me that with this election, it was all about Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania. And it was really that win for Trump was won in part because of historic turnout for the Amish community. And many of them have really borne the ugly weight of unconstitutional overreach from the federal government and state governments
Yes.
persecuting them uh, for selling healthier foods than the junk foods that our government taxpayer dollars are used for. And so, if you ever want to win Pennsylvania again, Republicans, you might want to consider this mandate that the Amish folks gave you and make sure that they never have to go through this kind of persecution again. Because if you can't deliver on this momentous opportunity and make sure that folks don't have to be raided at
Mhm.
gunpoint for selling milk from a cow's udder,
Yeah.
you might not ever have a chance to have power back, buddy. I'm just saying. It's just how it
Yeah.
works.
Oh, I think that's a fantastic observation. And you may know, Dave, I mean, you live in this world a little better than I do. Have we ever had this big a voter turnout among the Amish? I mean, they
Yeah.
typically don't vote, but I've never heard of something like this.
And it's because of that Make America Healthy Again mandate.
Right,
If that's
right,
not if that's not implemented, you're going to lose any opportunity, I think, to ever win Pennsylvania again. Not just for Pennsylvania, but a host of other swing
right,
states
right,
that had progressives and independents and health conscious people who said, you know what, I didn't want to support Romney. I never wanted to support McCain. I never wanted to support a Bush. But if Trump has this opportunity to build this coalition and really execute for the people, not
right,
little token little comments, real
right.
execution. If that's what happens, if the American people can get their freedom back, you will have historic opportunities for the greatest comeback this country's ever seen. So
Yeah.
don't mess it up. That's my
Yeah,
message.
that's why I think better than MAGA and better than MAHA is MAFA, Make America Free Again.
Yeah.
If we can make America free again, then a lot of this dysfunctionality, the power of K Street. I mean, people talk about the power of these lobbyists. Well, why is K Street so big? Well, K Street's so big is because all of our freedoms are for sale. If our freedoms weren't for sale, there wouldn't be anything to lobby for. And so, we just that federal the power of the federal government just needs to be whacked. I mean, it's time to do whack-a-mole on the federal government and remand a lot of this, back to the states and the local control, to where it's not a one size fits all. The reason there's so much acrimony and division in the country is because we have arrogated all of these thorny discussions. We've arrogated it to the federal level where it's a winner take all deal. If
Yeah.
this were a 50 state experiment like our founders envisioned, then one state could regulate more, one state could regulate less, and everybody could kind of see, well, here's what's going on over there. Look what's going on over there. Look what's going on over there, and you can kind of compare with these experiments. But when it's a one size fits all, suddenly there's no experiment, and the odds are too great. So then you have a K Street, and you've got everybody clamoring for their piece of that federal whatever federal freedom or largesse or whatever it is, and it just heightens the stakes for everybody, and I think that's one of the reasons we have such tremendous division.
Yeah, it will heal the division. And another thing, I'll leave it here. The fentanyl crisis, by the way, I've got the uh, academicians who've been working on this for decades, who've got the finest universities that they're working with in the nutritional world that show the conclusive evidence that the vegetable oils, these processed vegetable oils, are worse than the trans fats. They're more carcinogenic than those toxic fats, and these vegetable oils are driving the heart disease. They're driving diabetes, and also as it relates to the fentanyl crisis, the vegetable oils are in fact driving chronic pain problems to the point where grants have been issued for a long time to find out how to create drugs to block the effects of these rich omega-6 fats that are in the vegetable oils, which are driving the chronic pain. And these are being given by folks who want to stop the opioid epidemic abuse. So if you want to stop the fentanyl crisis, which is one of the top 5 or 6 things you would hear Trump and Vance talk about, you have to address the vegetable oil thing because that's what's driving the chronic pain. So when you keep subsidizing the very fuel that causes the fentanyl and opioid crisis to manifest, you will not get the results that you promised the American people. So that's my opinion, and that's what I'm just sharing with you right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. When you realize, there are 6 things that American farm policy subsidize. 6 things. It's corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton, rice, and sugar. Those are the 6 things. And so if you eliminated those subsidies, I mean, they're now called crop insurance because it sounds better than subsidies. If you eliminated that crop insurance and put those on a risk on an actual risk plane with everything else, their costs would go up. Farmers would produce. I mean, it would change the monetization formula, for all of those 6 things, and so that's why a lot of this we don't need new policy. We just need less policy. We don't need more government oversight. We need a lot less government manipulation and intervention. And a lot of these things would just kind of, ease off just as a result of marketplace differences.
Yeah, the only people who stand in the opposition are people who make a killing off of the taxpayer dollars subsidizing the things that are killing our children. And it's going to stop. Let me tell you, it's going to stop. People like me, we're not, my generation, we got a long way to go, Lord willing, if we can keep our health, right?
Yeah,
And we're not going to stop with this. So it's either going to happen now when this opportunity happens, or it will happen on the other side or somewhere else. The
yeah,
reckoning will happen. The crony corporate capture of our food system will be exposed and fully understood by the American people. And it's a matter of doing it the right way, the unifying way, the bipartisan way, the win-win way. That's what we want. That's what I'm pushing for. We don't
yeah.
need zero-sum solutions. That's what DC does. We don't need that. We need less of that. We need win-win solutions. So I appreciate your time, Joel. Any last thoughts?
Um, no, on that regard, I would just say that um, the most encouragement that I can give anyone is to realize that what we have today, right now, uh, you know, forget what you like or what you don't like or whatever. But what we have today is
Mhm.
a culmination of trillions and trillions of decisions that we and our ancestors have made leading up to today. And what we have in 40 years will also be the result of the cumulative decisions that we make between now and then. So, my encouragement is never underestimate the power of a decision. Your decision today to be part of the solution. Don't just say, well, it's too inconvenient to cook from scratch, or it takes too much time to find a farmer. It takes too blah 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 blah. No, 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 no. You don't need to watch Netflix. You don't need to keep up with the Kardashians on TikTok. You don't need to play video games. Right now, you need to be part of the tsunami revival toward truth that we just enjoyed, and let's ride this wave and enjoy and leverage it, so that we move our country to a redemptive tract, a redemptive trajectory rather than a continuing, um, um, you know, exploitive conquistador kind of trajectory. We can make this happen, but it's going to be, one decision at a time. That's the way it's going to happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, Joel Salatin making waves, and I think the country's ready for those waves. I'm David Gornoski. You can follow me at David Gornoski on X or email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.